There's a video going around right now that most people are watching for the wrong reasons. They're laughing at the end of it, sharing it like it's a prank clip, like it belongs next to the guy who slipped on a banana peel or the cat that fell off a shelf. Thousands of comments, millions of views. Did you see his face? Did you see him flinch? I was there. I wasn't filming. I wasn't trying to go viral. I was standing maybe 4 meters away with a lukewarm coffee in my hand and a tourist map I'd already given up trying to fold properly, and I watched the whole thing happen from start to finish. And I need to tell you, it was not funny, not the way they're making it out to be. It was a Tuesday in late October. That matters, actually, because October in London has a specific kind of gray to it that feels almost deliberate, like the sky made a decision. Not raining, not sunny, just this flat, cold light that makes everything look slightly older than it is. The kind of morning where your breath mists in front of your face and you can't quite tell if it's fog or just the city exhaling. I'd been in London for 9 days by that point, over from Dublin for a work conference that had wrapped up the Friday before, but I'd extended the trip because I'd never actually done the tourist thing properly. Never stood outside Buckingham Palace. Never watched the changing of the guard. I was 34 years old and I'd been to London 6 times, and I'd always had somewhere else to be. So Tuesday morning, no agenda. I took the tube to St. James's Park, walked up through the park itself, which, if you've never done it, you should, because there's a point on the bridge over the lake where you can see the palace on one side and the London Eye on the other, and it genuinely stops you for a second. And I came out onto the mall around 9:30. The crowd was already building near the front gates. That's the thing about Buckingham Palace that nobody tells you before you go. The crowd asterisk. You imagine you'll have this quiet, dignified moment. You and the guards and the architecture and a sense of history. What you actually get is 200 people compressed against iron railings, phones in the air, children on shoulders, tour guides speaking in 6 different languages simultaneously. A man selling Union Jack hats from a cart. Someone's dog. The dog seemed fine with all of it. I found a spot near the corner of the railings, a bit off to the side where the crowd thinned out slightly. Better angle, honestly. You could see the guardsman clearly without craning your neck. He was already there. Standing in the box, that small wooden sentry box just to the right of the main gate, completely still. Red tunic, bearskin, rifle at his side with the kind of rigid precision that doesn't look natural because it isn't. That posture is trained into a person. Hours and hours of standing exactly like that until it becomes something between discipline and reflex. I watched him for a while before anything happened, just watched. There's something genuinely strange about standing close to someone who is maintaining total stillness while the world moves chaotically around them. The tourists shifting and jostling, kids pointing, a bus going past on the road behind me, and him just completely present in his own stillness, like he'd found a pocket of silence inside the noise. His face was young. I noticed that first. Hard to put an age on it under the bearskin, but the jaw, the way his mouth sat, mid-20s maybe, could have been younger. He had the kind of face that hasn't quite settled into itself yet, still carrying something boyish in the structure of it, and the absolute blankness of his expression was doing a lot of work against that boyishness. Like he was asterisk choosing stone every single second. A couple near me, American, early 40s, matching puffer jackets, were reading from a travel guide. The woman said to her husband, "It says they train for months. They're not allowed to react to anything." Her husband said, "Anything." "Anything." He said, "Huh," in a way that already worried me slightly. I took a sip of my coffee and looked at the guard. He had noticed the couple, I'm certain of that. Not with his eyes were fixed forward the way they're trained to be, but there was something, a micro-adjustment of attention. The way a person who is very good at not reacting still receives information. He'd heard them. He knew exactly what the husband's asterisk meant. And he was already waiting for it. Here's something I've thought about a lot since that day. We talk about the royal guard like they're a prop, a set piece, part of the scenery, like the railings and the flag and the stone facade. We say they're not allowed to react, and we treat that rule like it's an invitation. Not allowed to react becomes a game, a challenge, a chance to be the person who finally gets a flicker, gets a twitch, gets a man who has dedicated years to a tradition of discipline to break just for a second, just enough for a clip. And then we film it and we share it, and we caption it, "He almost smiled lol," and we collect the likes, and we move on to the next thing. The guard doesn't move on. He stands there for the rest of his shift with that still face and whatever is happening behind it. And something is always happening behind it, trust me on that. And he does not get to go viral for his composure. Only for the moments when someone pushes hard enough to crack it. I want to tell you about what I watched for the 45 minutes I stood near that gate. Not just the moment that ended up in the video. All of it. Because the video cuts in right at the end, and it misses everything that made the ending mean something. The first person to try something was a teenager. Couldn't have been older than 16, 17. Red trainers, a phone on a selfie stick that he was using with the kind of aggressive confidence that suggested he'd done this before and been rewarded for it. He walked right up to the edge of the permitted area. There's a line, a rope line, that you're not supposed to cross, and he stopped just on the civilian side of it. He started pulling faces. Not subtle ones, exaggerated, cartoonish distortions, tongue out, eyes crossed, cheeks puffed. The kind of thing that's designed to be impossible to ignore. And his mates, 4 or 5 of them standing a few feet back, were filming on their own phones, creating this little media apparatus pointed at one man who was standing in a box trying to be a symbol of something. The guard did not move. Not a millimeter. The teenager escalated, started doing a sort of shuffling dance, made a sound, I can't describe it exactly, somewhere between a bird call and someone mocking a bugle. His friends started laughing. A few tourists nearby laughed too, uncertain. The way people laugh at things they're not sure they should find funny. The guard's eyes did not move. His jaw did not shift. His hands on the rifle did not tighten or loosen. He was so completely, utterly absent from what the boy was doing, not ignoring it, which implies effort but genuinely operating in a different reality, one where this was simply not occurring. The teenager kept going for maybe 90 seconds, 2 minutes, long enough that it stopped being funny and started being something else. His mates had lowered their phones slightly. The laughing had gotten quieter. There's a length of time after which pulling faces at a person who won't react stops feeling like you're winning and starts feeling like you're just making faces at the air. The boy stopped, stood there for a moment, looked at the guard. The guard looked straight ahead. The boy walked back to his mates. One of them clapped him on the shoulder in the way that means good try and means let's move on, and means maybe not the win we were hopping for. They drifted away down the railings. I watched the guard's face for the 30 seconds after they left. Nothing, clean and blank and young and absolutely still. But I noticed his breathing. The tiniest, almost undetectable shift, a fraction deeper, a fraction slower, like something settling back into place, like a word swallowed. I noticed that. The next 20 minutes were quieter. The crowd cycled. New tour groups arrived, paused, moved on. A Japanese family took photos with immense politeness, staying well back from the line, the children standing straight as if they too were being respectful of something they understood to be serious. An older man with a cane stopped for a long time just watching, and there was something in the way he watched that felt different from everyone else. Informed, maybe, or remembering. I got another coffee from a cart nearby, came back to roughly the same spot. That's when she arrived. I say she was maybe 25, 26. Dressed well, the kind of dressed, well that's also a costume, pastel coat, platform boots, hair done, full face of makeup at 9:30 in the morning. She had a ring light attached to her phone. A ring light asterisk. She'd brought it from wherever she was staying specifically for this. She was not here as a tourist. She positioned herself near the sentry box with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this kind of thing many times before. She knew where the light was. She knew the angles. She had a friend with her who took up a position off to the side to capture the wider shot while she handled the close-up. She started talking to the camera first, setting up the bit. I couldn't hear exactly what she was saying. Her voice was pitched low, directed into the phone, but the shape of it was clear enough. Here we go. Let's see if I can get a reaction. Then she turned to the guard. What she did next was, I think, more sophisticated than the teenager and also worse. She didn't pull faces. She didn't make noise. She stood close, right at the edge of the permitted distance, and she started talking to him. Conversationally. Warmly almost, like they were old friends catching up. Hi there, what's your name? You can tell me, I won't tell anyone. Pause. Are you cold? You look cold. I'm cold and I've only been standing here 2 minutes. She laughed light and rehearsed. Do you ever get bored, like genuinely bored? What do you think about? Do you do maths in your head? Do you go through song lyrics? The guard stood still. I've been told you can actually talk in emergencies. Is this an emergency? She laughed again. I feel like this is slightly an emergency for me. She was good at it. That's the uncomfortable truth. She had a likable quality, a warmth in her delivery that made you almost want to respond to her. She wasn't cruel exactly. She was using the language of friendliness as a tool, which is a particular kind of cruelty in its own right. The guard's face was stone. But here is what I saw that her camera didn't catch, because her camera was aimed at his face, and I was standing at an angle where I could see, just barely, his hands. His right hand, the one holding the rifle. The knuckles had gone white. Not dramatically, not like a movie, just white, tight. A grip that had increased by some small, controlled, invisible unless you're watching for it amount. He was there. He was fully, completely, consciously there, inside every word she was saying, and he was choosing second by second, with what I can only describe as tremendous effort dressed up as effortlessness, to give her nothing. Okay, she said eventually, shifting tactic. What if I told you something really shocking? Would you react then? What if I said? And that was when something changed. She never finished the sentence. Because a small boy, couldn't have been more than 5, maybe 6, had gotten separated from whoever he was with, and in the way that small children move through crowds, which is to say with absolutely no awareness of physics or social convention, he had drifted under the rope line. He was now standing about 2 feet in front of the sentry box, directly in the path of where the guard would march if the guard marched, which he wasn't right now, but the boy didn't know that. The boy was just looking up at the guard with his mouth open and his eyes enormous, the way children look at things that are both magnificent and slightly frightening. The woman with the ring light stopped talking. The guard looked down. It was the first time his gaze had moved from the fixed forward position since I'd been watching him. A controlled, deliberate tilt of the head. Not breaking protocol. This was exactly the kind of situation where the guard was permitted to act, where a small child inches from his post was a genuine consideration. He looked at the boy. The boy looked back. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then the guard's expression did something. It was so small that if you'd blinked you'd have missed it. Not a smile, not really. More like the shadow of a smile, the suggestion of one in the muscles around his eyes more than his mouth. A softening, half a second, maybe less. He looked back up, forward again, stone again. But for that half second, which I promise you I am not inventing, I am not dramatizing, I watched it happen with my own eyes 4 meters away. He had looked at that child the way anyone looks at a small child who is doing something that is genuinely quite sweet. Like a person. A woman, the boy's mother, presumably, arrived at the rope line in the way parents arrive when they've just realized their child has gone somewhere they shouldn't be. That specific half-run that's also trying not to look like panic. She scooped him up with an apology aimed at everyone in general, the crowd, the guards, the institution. Possibly God. The boy protested being carried. She kissed the side of his head and moved him back to the safe side of the rope. The woman with the ring light had her phone still raised. She'd filmed all of it. The moment, the half-second softening, she knew she'd gotten something. She was briefly looking at her phone with an expression I can only describe as calculation. I want to pause here and say something about the man standing in that box, because I don't think the internet gives much thought to who he actually is. He is not a robot. He is not a prop. He is a soldier, a real one from a real regiment who has gone through real training and who goes home at the end of his shift to a life that has nothing to do with this. He has opinions and a favorite meal and probably a group chat where he says things that would make his mother raise an eyebrow. He gets tired. He gets cold. And it was cold that morning, the kind of cold that sits in your bones after 20 minutes and doesn't leave. He has days when he doesn't want to be there, probably, the same way everyone has days when they don't want to be somewhere. And he stands there anyway. Not just stands, performs a function that is simultaneously ceremonial and real. These are active military personnel. The regiment at Buckingham Palace holds active service designations. The weapon is not decorative. The training is not theatrical. It is a tradition, yes, layers of history and pageantry and national identity all compressed into a red coat and a bearskin. But the man inside the costume is not a costume. He is a person who made a choice to serve. And part of that service involves standing in front of thousands of strangers every day, while some of them try to use him as content. I thought about all of this, while the woman with the ring light decided what to do next. She tried again. Different approach this time. She stepped back slightly, changed her angle, said something to her friend in a low voice. Then she moved closer to the sentry box, not aggressively, not quickly, but with purpose. She started talking again. This time she dropped the warmth. It was still performative, still camera-ready, but the register had shifted. She was doing the thing where you pretend to be unimpressed, talking to the guard like she was just mildly bored by the whole exercise, like his stillness was slightly tedious to her. Must be nice, honestly, standing here. All this attention. I mean, people literally come from other countries just to see you stand there. The guard stood there. Do you feel like a celebrity? You kind of are, right? Like a really underpaid celebrity who isn't allowed to enjoy it. A few people nearby laughed. They were watching now. The crowd had noticed that something was happening, or rather that she was making something happen. A small secondary audience had formed. I wonder if you ever Google yourself. Like, you must be in thousands of photos, thousands of videos. You ever look yourself up? The guard stood there. And here is where it started to shift. Not with anything he did, with what the crowd did or didn't do. The laughing had stopped. It had just kind of evaporated, quietly. The way it had with the teenager, but faster this time and with a different quality. This wasn't the end of a joke. This was something else. A discomfort settling over the watching people that wasn't quite disapproval but was edging toward it. An older woman near me, British, I think, with the kind of practical coat that suggests she walked here from somewhere nearby and does so regularly, said something under her breath. Not loudly, not performatively, just muttered it to the woman standing beside her. I heard it. This is embarrassing. She didn't mean the guard. The woman with the ring light either didn't hear or chose not to hear. She was committed now, in the way that people with cameras get committed to the bit. She'd been there long enough that stopping would feel like losing. The clip had to pay off or the whole enterprise was a waste. She moved closer again. What do you actually do if someone really crosses the line? Like for real crosses it? Do you shout? Do you step back from the post? The voice came from the left side of the gate, not the guardsman in the box. A different guard, one I hadn't been paying much attention to, positioned further along the wall, had turned his head and delivered those 4 words in a tone that was neither loud nor aggressive nor theatrical. It was simply completely serious. The woman stopped. She turned, looked at the other guard. Her ring light caught him, broad-shouldered, older than the one in the box, with a different quality of stillness. The kind that doesn't come from training alone. The kind that comes from having been in situations where stillness was the wrong option and knowing the difference. "I wasn't," she started. "Step back from the post, please." Please, that word doing enormous amounts of work. She stepped back, 2 steps. Her friend lowered the secondary camera slightly. The crowd had gone almost completely quiet. What happened next is the part that's in the video. What the video doesn't show is everything that came before it, which is the only thing that gives what happened next any meaning. The woman with the ring light had stepped back, yes, but she hadn't left. She stood there for a minute, maybe 2, while the older guard returned to his position and the crowd slowly, carefully went back to doing tourist things, pretending they hadn't been watching, consulting their maps, taking photos of the gate. She looked at the guard in the box. He was still perfectly still. Back to the fixed forward position, the rifle at his side, the young face under the bearskin doing its careful work of being stone. She raised the camera one more time. Not to talk, she didn't say anything. She just filmed him, held the phone up and filmed him standing there, and I could see in her profile, in the set of her jaw, that she was trying to figure out how to frame it, how to make something out of a man who had given her nothing. And then, in the way things sometimes happen in crowds, there was a small natural gap in the ambient noise. A bus passed, and the tour guide voices paused, and the children in the near vicinity happened to go quiet for a moment. One of those accidental silences that cities have occasionally, brief and inexplicable. In that silence, you could hear the guard breathing. Just breathing, in and out, slow and even and controlled, and I want to say human because that's what it was. Just a man breathing, alive in there behind everything they'd asked him to stand still and be. I don't know if she heard it. I don't know if that's what did it. But she lowered the phone. She stood there for a moment with it at her side. Her friend, off to the left, had stopped filming entirely. The ring light was still on, this absurd little circle of artificial brightness in the flat October morning, but the phone wasn't pointed at anything. She was just looking at him. And then she did something that I did not expect. She stepped back to the rope line, stood on the civilian side of it properly, reached out and switched off the ring light, put the phone in her coat pocket. And she stood there without filming, and she watched him. For maybe 3 full minutes she just stood there and watched him stand there. No performance, no setup, no bit. I was watching her face, which is why I can tell you that the expression on it was complicated in a way I'm not sure I can name exactly. It wasn't guilt, not quite. It wasn't admiration either, or not purely. It was something more unsettled than that. The expression of a person who has come to a place expecting one experience and found their way into a different and less comfortable one. Her friend came and stood beside her. Neither of them said anything. The guard breathed in and out, slow and even and cold and present.